Creepers left to rise, buzz like crazy. Everybody's trying to steal my lady. Spiders in the mirror and feel this can't be right. Back to the scene of a Friday night, to a blessed collision still frozen tight. Spear drinkers, Cupid and the sound of her first chime. And why did you argue? We're dreaming of those eyes, the best part of my life. And when we make love, babe, don't make a sound. The clock won't turn around. Ooh, you turn around. 2,000 little fires. And ooh, your circle is spreading. Slowing things down when I wanted to race, catching up again when you try to chase.
Hello my friends, welcome back to another reading vlog. I still am doing braids. It's just too dang hot for anything else right now. Plus I like them, I think they're cute. And I need to dye my hair, so, you know, nothing says, look at how my roots have grown out like French braids, am I right? Anyway. So, this reading vlog is for the Romance Takeover Readathon, which is a readathon hosted by Jen from the Book Refuge, and Jessin, Christy, Rachel, and Caitlin, and myself are co-hosts. And yeah, it's very fun. This one's theme was light versus dark, so I decided to go with Team Dark because I was just in the mood for some dark romance. So let me catch you up. Today is actually Wednesday, so I skipped a few days talking to you. Sorry about that. But I have not loved the books that I have picked, and let me tell you why, okay? Don't mind the doggos, they're just biting on each other like they do. So the first book that I picked was actually a buddy read with Jessin, and it is Lord of London Town by Tilly Cole. So, interestingly enough, I had already checked this out on Kindle Unlimited before, because when I rechecked it out this time, it caught me up to like 5% in, which is where I had previously DNF'd it back when it came out in like 2020. Should have taken that as a sign. I did not like that book at all. And if you love this book, I am very sorry, but I'm not going to sugarcoat things because I feel like this is one of the most poorly written books that I have ever read in my life, and I am sorry to say that. I have only read one other book by Tilly Cole, and it was It Ain't Me, Babe, which I adored. I thought it was fabulous. And this book, which I believe was published in 2020, is like nothing like, nothing like, at least in my memory. Oh my gosh, y'all. I DNF'd this, and let me tell you exactly why. The number one reason that I DNF'd this was her writing. This writing is very melodramatic. It is overwrought. It is trying too hard. It is... So here is the middle of, like, nuanced characters, nuanced writing, right? We have characters who are complex. They're not purely good, purely bad. They're not stereotypical characters. Her characters, this is the middle, are way over here. Like, off camera. That's how far they are. Can you guys go? Kazi, go. They are so blatantly stereotypical that it is laughable, quite honestly. Also, the prologue of this book I found to be completely, quite honestly, appalling, where we are reading from the 13-year-old hero's point of view, how he is talking about some really gross sexual things about the heroine. And look, I'm not that big of a prude that I don't know kids that young get into stuff like that, right? But I absolutely do not want to read about it. Not even a little bit. And I understand the point she's trying to make with including that scene in there. She's trying to make it show you that he really had to grow up before his age, and this is what his world is like. I don't care. I don't want to read it. It's disgusting. I absolutely abhor the sexualization of children in any form. I don't care that it's fiction. I don't want to read it. So that was a big ding. But I was going to continue reading it. Wanda. Because I wanted to see what story she was telling. So I read through the first chapter. I got a little over halfway through, and I just could not continue. I DNF'd it. I did not even really say why I DNF'd it on Goodreads other than this writing is not for me. But I was talking with Chandler the other day, Chandler Ainsley, and we were talking about Anna Huang's books, and something that we both like about them is how her writing is pretty much invisible to us. It doesn't draw attention to itself. It's not overly flowery, and it's not trying too hard, right? I feel like sometimes certain authors can try too hard to make really beautiful, impactful writing, and it comes off as overwrought, overdoing it, trying too hard, right? It's purple prose at that point. This was so far beyond purple prose. This was literally, I honestly felt like a 15-year-old had written this. This was, so, the reasons for DNFing. The writing absolutely could not. Some of the most amateur writing I've ever read in my life, and I believe this is her newest release, or at least it was a release in 2020. And if that is true, I am very uninterested in picking up any of her future books. Like, the quality of the writing in this turned me off so much. I don't have a desire to read this author ever again. I really hesitate to say this because I feel like that makes me sound like a book snob. And I'm not, right? I can overlook writing. Sometimes I can't. I don't know that I can overlook writing so much as, I don't know, it's a scale, man. It's a scale, right? This was beyond. I could not see any bit of the story because of her over stereotypical characters, like terrible mental health rep. I mean, I'm not even gonna get into that really. That wasn't why I DNF'd it, although I did notice it. And just also, like, the first meeting of the hero and heroine when he's 13, I don't understand what we were supposed to gain from that. I don't understand how we were supposed to feel emotionally connected to them at that moment, because he was gross and disgusting to her, and all she did was walk down the stairs and stare at him, and she was beautiful. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, but like, I need more than that, okay? It's gotta be more than a pretty face and a hot body. Literally could not care less about that, okay? I think that most women, I'm gonna generalize for women at this time, I think most women have had the experience of being constantly sexualized by men. I certainly have. Doesn't matter that I'm married, doesn't matter a whit, you know? If my husband's not there, they're on me. And I'm just like, I absolutely hate it. And I feel like that is a large reason why I am so sensitive to this in romance books. I don't want to read it. I don't want to read it. I do not for 1 minute believe that it leads to love. This is my opinion. Yours may differ. This is my life experience. Okay, I've ranted enough about that. DNF'd it. So glad, man. I am... Okay, moving on. So the next book that I read is Captive in the Dark, I believe. Captive in the Dark was published in 2014, I believe. This was one of the first captor-captive romances. It is very dark. The entire thing basically reads as a grape fantasy. That's pretty much every scene in this book. We see our heroine who's 18. She's technically legal, but she's still in high school. 18. She ends up meeting this guy who she believes saves her from this predator guy. Oh no, lo and behold, this guy who saved her actually was planning to kidnap her, train her to be a sex slave, ends up finding her so attractive and appealing to him that he keeps her for his own personal sex slave, and this is a book about non-consent, right? Completely, 100%. Non-consent. There is honestly very little consent that happens in here. So a few months ago, I got a comment on my Instagram. Someone was, I believe they were saying something that immediately turns them off is, how did they say it? Body betraying syndrome. Like, she doesn't want books about body betraying. And that's exactly what this is, where the hero sexually assaults her and she ends up enjoying it. And I am not well versed enough or well studied enough in the field to speak on the value and the impact of dubious and non-consent dark romance for survivors of sexual trauma. So I'm not going to comment on that because I know there have been studies done about that prove the merit, and so I'm just going to leave that right there. But I am going to give you my personal opinion about it, and I found very little about this book to be enjoyable. There was an element of this that read very much like a thriller, where I was like, what is going to happen to her? What's going to happen next? But the big question for me is, when is this hero, he's not a hero, he assaults her from the first page to, like, almost right at the end, like a few pages before. He doesn't value her. He doesn't care about how she feels. The only reason that he ends up feeling like he loves her is because someone took her. He had to go get his property back. I found this book to be awful, quite honestly. I mean, and let me tell you why. Like, I am not afraid of dark content. You know, my favorite books, some of my favorite books of all time is this series by Pam Godwin. It is extremely dark. It deals a lot with sex trafficking and sex slave and some of the horrors that happen there. And some of those horrors are perpetuated between our couple, right? One of them is the aggressor and one of them is not. And I find them to be rich and compelling and very, very empathetic. And I love them very much, right? So my problem is not in the previous two books I'm talking about, is not the dark content, right? I actually really enjoy that because I feel like when done properly, when done in the hands of a master, it shines a light on human behavior and the potential for a redemption arc that is unparalleled. You cannot find that type of story anywhere else. These guys are just being so loud. You can't find that type of story outside of dark romance, where so many dark things happen, and then we see a change in thought process sometimes. My favorite types, right? A change in heart. We see love initiating that change, and I'm here for that. I love and adore that so much. I am coming to realize it is extremely difficult to find, right? And when I say redemption arc and change in thoughts, I'm not saying a villain turn to hero, right? I think that Run Posey Run is an excellent example of a book where our hero remains villainous from first page to last page. What changes is the way that he thinks about the heroine and the way that he feels for her. And he reflects on how he has treated her and how that might motivate him to change when he considers her feelings, right? I find that fascinating, and I am very interested in stories like that. Most of the dark romance I have been coming across this year are not like that, and I understand those are going to be gems, hidden gems. Most of them purely rely on shock value, trope after trope after trope. Those character and plot scenes that are not nuanced, they're off camera, they're so far, they're so hard in your face that you cannot help but be emotionally manipulated, even if you're like, I really don't like this style of writing, right? So, I picked this book up not thinking I would like it, to be quite honest, but I was very curious to see what a 2014 dark romance, one of the first captor captives, would look like. I really wanted to see if this situation felt like there was merit and redemption there, because that's what I am there for. I am there for that redemption arc. I want to see love change people. I want to see people change their thoughts and their ways. I think that is what I love about romance books, and anybody who isn't there for that, like, that's fine. That's your prerogative. If you're just here for smut, there's plenty of that out there. The type of books that I am looking for are much harder to find, and so I usually end up unsatisfied. So, this book was not terribly written, but it wasn't well written either. There was some of the writing in here was overwrought, trying a little too hard. Not to the point where it was unreadable, not to the point where it was drawing attention to itself and pulling me out of the story, you know? But it did, some of the dialogue also was a little clunky and a little cringy and unnatural. And I say that because I am here to critique books. I can't even imagine how difficult that job would be to create dialogue that feels natural. So, yeah, I didn't like that. I find it very interesting, how I've noticed some people that I that I follow on Goodreads how highly they rated this book, even reading it recently. And really condemning other books as being problematic, that in my opinion, from my worldview, it's the complete opposite. You know, like, I found this book to be pretty problematic. The hero is a Middle Eastern man. It's a slave and master dynamic, and there was zero consent in here. And I know that's a hallmark of dark romance, but I did not like how it was portrayed in here. I did not like their relationship dynamic. There was no growth on the part of the hero. There was no acknowledging. There was no moving forward unless it was into another sex scene. So I didn't like this book. I gave it 2 stars, and that was really purely because I think that this was a huge task that she took on. And while she didn't do it justice for me personally, I am not going to speak on the value that this may have to victims of sexual assault, sexual abuse, sexual trauma. So that's what I've read. Caught you up on everything there. And now I'm gonna give this vlog one more shot, okay? Because I need to start reading books for another vlog that I have coming up. I'm still gonna include them in the readathon, but it's gonna be in a separate vlog. So the next book that I'm gonna read is The Lord I Left by Scarlett Peckham. So I asked on Instagram today for y'all to pick a book for me, and this one won by far, like by a landslide. I think it was like 60, or maybe it was like 70-20 split. The other one was A Motorcycle Romance, the second one in Kate Wells' series. So I'm going to start this. This is a dark historical romance. I'm very excited about it. I adore Scarlett Peckham's writing. I've been wanting a historical romance. I've really not read a lot recently. I feel like I've done a lot of contemporary. I love her writing. She is a masterful writer, and I am ready to experience some beautiful writing. So that's my plan. I'm gonna do reading sprints on Jessen's channel in just a half an hour, so I'll try and get some footage of that and everything. But thanks for watching, thanks for coming back, and I'll see y'all when I have more to say. Hopefully it'll be a little more positive, and once again, I apologize if you love those books. That was just my opinion, and my opinion really means nothing. I'm just one person on the internet. Hello friends. Okay, I have an update for you, and then I'm going to finish this vlog and start a new one. So I did finish The Lord I Left by Scarlett Peckham. I ended up giving this 3 stars, and this is probably my least favorite Scarlett Peckham book that I have read. Part of that is because I don't... No, so I didn't give this a 3-star rating because of the uncomfortable material in here. I did give it a 3-star rating because I felt like the characters were underdeveloped. I felt like their romance was not solidly based in emotional feelings, and it was largely about their physical desires for one another. And I also felt like the pace of this book was quite laggy at times, even though it had a lot of really interesting material. The basic premise of this is our hero is he's a lieutenant, and he's an evangelical reformer, so he is to go and investigate people who are working in the flesh trade and try and help these sinners see the errors of their ways. So our heroine Alice is I believe she's an apprentice to London's most notorious whipping governess. She felt like that position would give her some freedom. There is a lot of good talk in here about that type of work if you're looking for good representation there. And I liked it. I liked that aspect of it. I felt like there was some potential to have some good conversations. They end up sort of stuck together when she needs a ride back to her home because her mother is really ill and dying, and there's a blizzard and he offers her a ride, and that's sort of what begins their relationship. Now, the hero is investigating this, considers it to be sinning and something really evil, and he has a very unique cause of excitement. These pups are playing. And I felt like that aspect of it was what made me so uncomfortable. The author tells you in the opening, like, exactly what it is. And she says, just so you know, this is in here. So this book has aerophilia. And I had never read a book with that before, and I don't want to ever again because I found it to be deeply uncomfortable, and I have finally come up against something that I'm like, yeah, I don't want to read this ever again. So this felt like it had similar vibes to Priest, but it didn't feel to me like it was handled with as much care or development. I feel like the thing that made Priest really work for me was how layered and nuanced the story was and how complicated Father Bell's conflicting desires were, and I just really, really liked that. I didn't feel like this subject, which is very weighty and complicated, I didn't feel like it was given enough consideration and development. I didn't feel like it was fleshed out enough. I didn't like that it was used just for titillation because I just didn't like that. So part of the reason I didn't enjoy this book is personal preference, and another part of it was just, I feel like this is weak storytelling and weak characters and weak pacing, and I expect more from Scarlett Peckham. I think she's an incredible author, and I honestly have loved everything that she's written, but this one just really, really let me down. So this is definitely my least favorite Scarlett Peckham book I've ever read. My least favorite in this series. I've read most of her works at this point, so disappointing. 3 stars. So this vlog has been a bit of a disaster. You know, I have really kind of struggled. I'm tempted to go back and edit that first clip out because I don't want to be rude about people's favorite books. So if that was one of your favorite books and you're still watching, I am sorry. But I also I feel like it's okay to critique books if it didn't work for you. It's okay to have critical reviews. I think it's good to have critical reviews. And I think that what I wish would happen is that more people could separate critique of a book with critique of them as a reader, because it's not the same thing, you know? And I also will say that I am very critical of writing specifically because I was going to be a writer. I was in a really excellent critique group where we would exchange writing from people who were much more knowledgeable about writing than I was, and I learned very well how to break down writing and how to critique it and what to look for, what are signs of amateur writing. And so now when I read books, and I see this specifically as a problem with mostly indie romance, because they don't have editors, you know, I can't not see it, you know what I mean? I have been trained to look for that, and so now that's all that I see. If it's there, I see it. Sometimes I can look past it, but usually not if it is something that I have been trained to notice, you know what I mean? So I feel like at times I think that everyone has gone through that type of training, and no, not everybody has, right? So I don't mean at all to be negative if you don't see those things. I think that's wonderful. Half the time I wish I didn't see them. So I don't know. I feel like I haven't put out a negative vlog like this in a really long time, but yeah, I'm going to do a change of pace. I'm going to read some other books for the readathon, and I'm going to have that next. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks so much for watching. Feel free to leave me a black heart for dark romance, and I'll see y'all next time.